Barak Yahawah, Bahashem Yahawashi, Bahashem Rawchaa Qadash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is E will be the most affected. Now, pretty much, this morning I was going through my favorites, my bookmarks, and I ran across this one article that I had saved years ago, and I clicked on it so that I could read into it, see if there was anything I could glean from it to do a lesson on it. And pretty much, when I clicked on it, it said that page was no longer available. It couldn't be found. And I was like, wow. I said, okay. So what I did was I started doing some research to see if I could find it. And I found some information on it. It's not new information. It's old information. Elder Apostle Kabar was the first one that brought it out. So I want to touch on it. And the thing about it is now we're in the information age, which is a good and bad thing. The good thing is you can find a lot of information. A lot of information is accessible at the fingertips. You don't have to go to the library and look these things up at the touch of your couple of keystrokes. You'll find it. But the bad thing is that there's a lot of disinformation also out there, and the amount of disinformation is more than the amount of information. So when you do research on certain things we speak about, you're going to get a lot of sites that are going to say that's not true, this is not true, you can't prove this, you can't prove that, you can't prove the other. Well, years ago we did the research and we found all these things to be true. It's just that it's getting harder and harder to access information because Esau's he's in control of shit. So if he's in control of shit and he's set up, he's not going to allow things or information that is, detrimental to his well-being, or his standing. All right. So what I'm speaking about is House Bill 1274, which is a death penalty House bill. And I believe this is straight from Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. Now, this House bill has a provision in here to, the deleted penalty would be either by electrocution or guillotine. All right. Now, there was some information that came out years ago that the government had bought 30,000 guillotines, and they're in these FEMA camps, for when martial law is declared, so on and so forth, civil unrest. But then when you go research that, it's telling you that that's not true, that, there's no one that can prove it. When you fact check it, it tell you it's a lie, that no one can prove that the government bought this, that, the other, whatever. But within your laws, you have provisions, to either be electrocuted if you're on the deleted penalty, or to be, hit with the guillotine for purposes of organ harvesting. So why would you have that in there, that provision in there, that would afford those inmates that are donating organs to have a choice between the two, and not have those available if they choose the latter, which is the guillotine. So as the HB 74 death penalty guillotine provisions is a bill in the 1995-96 session of the U.S. House of Representatives. Bill amends Article 2 of Chapter 10 of the Title 17 of the Official Code. And you could go there and hit the full description. I believe I put this in the description box if I'm not mistaken. I'm just say deleted penalty guillotine provision. You got your read that again. It says a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 10 of Title 17 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to the death penalty or deleted penalty generally, so as to provide a statement of legislative policy, to provide for death by guillotine, to provide for applicability, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Be it enacted by the General Assembly of Georgia. So this is something that's in the records. Section 1. The General Assembly finds that while prisoners condemned to deletion may wish to donate one or more of their organs for transplant, any such desire is thwarted by the fact that electrocution makes all such organs unsuitable for transplant. The intent of the General Assembly in enacting this legislation is to provide for a method of execution which is compatible with the donation of organs by a condemned prisoner. Article 2 of Chapter 10 of Title 17 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to the death or the deletion penalty generally, is amended by striking in its entirety Code Section 171038 relating to deletion or deleting sentences generally, and inserting in lieu thereof the following. All persons who have been convicted of a capital offense and have had imposed upon them sentences of deletion shall, at the election of the condemned, suffer such punishment either by electrocution or by guillotine. If the condemned fails to make an election by the 30th day preceding the date scheduled for execution, punishment shall be by electrocution in all cases in which the defendant is sentenced to be, and then the rest of it is redacted or removed. But you see the two provisions. You have either electrocution or guillotine. All right. So, I was just thinking, meditating on the direction that America's going. And, we know that when society totally collapses, the most vulnerable are women and children. But the ones that are going to be affected the most also on top of that is E. And the reason why is because you have to remember that this country was conquered and colonized by Esau. And after they conquered and colonized it, they set it up, with their laws, their, provisions, their different, whatever lands that they have. And, they were able to grow. So as the collapse of society or the collapse of America is happening, they're going to be affected the most because they're gung-ho for the country which they conquered. They're gung-ho about their freedoms and their rights and such and so on and so forth. Jake, on the other hand, have always been in captivity, have always been under the rule of this devil since they've been here, have always been in a bad case, bad scenario, bad position. So that is, to them, society collapses or not, it's not going to matter because they're still, not progressing like Esau was progressing. So the main people that's going to be affected, of course, Jake is going to be affected by this. I'm not saying they're not. But the main ones that are going to really be up in arms is Esau, because they see that this freedom that they have or had is slipping away from them. Matter of fact, I was going to start with another scripture. Let me go to this one here real quick. Job 14 and 5. And what it says, seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou was appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. So his days are determined. He has a set time of rulership, a set time to rule, and a set boundary that he cannot pass. All right. So, and with that being said, these patriotic Edomites are going to take up arms against the government because there will be a civil war. If things continue in this direction that is going, which the scriptures speak about civil war, it's not something that we're just saying, well, it's just a prediction just based off of, what we want to say. No, this is a prediction based off of prophecy, based off of scriptures. And the Lord said he cannot lie. When we read 2nd Ezra 15 and 14, woe to the world and them that dwell therein. Why? Because there is a worldwide, agenda being placed in the world that's going to affect everybody. You have to remember that here it is in 2024, the hopeful year of Jacob's trouble. You have had generation after generation after generation after generation after generation of Edomites that have, benefited off of, their so-called white status. They've had the freedoms that no one else had, even though now they're complaining, which they have a nerve to complain that they're not being treated fairly, but they've had that freedom for generations and generations and generations. So now that they're being backed into a corner, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to, take up arms and defend their position. It says, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, right? Because this is the time of the end. This is the time of judgment for Esau. Their time is up. So now it's time for them to pay the piper, so to speak. And one people shall stand up against another. Now, when it says one people shall stand up against another, you have race wars, you have class wars, and the such. Different factions fighting against other factions. This is what the Civil War of the ancient, or back in, what was that? The 1800s was all about. It was the South, the Edomites from the South, Confederates, were fighting against the Edomites from the North, because the North, through the international banking families, were setting up, the manufacturing age, so to speak, and they wanted Jake up north for cheaper labor. This is why they gave up. They set up the so-called Emancipation Proclamation, which the Emancipation Proclamation does not mean that the slaves were freed. Emancipation just means to trade from one hand to another. So they went from being slaves in the South to slaves in the North, being paid, a small wage. So it was more so cheap labor. When they were down south, they were free labor. When they came up north, they became cheap labor. All right. So these Edomites that believe in this whole American, society, to believe in the so-called founding forefathers and, the whole so-called greatness of America, like the Proud Boys and others, they're going to be upset that these devils are pushing America in the direction that it's going. And they're going to take up arms, because within the Constitution, it tells you that if the government becomes corrupt, I'm just merely paraphrasing, that the citizens have the right to take up arms against the government and replace the government. I mean, so many words, I'm not an expert in the Constitution, so you could go and look up the provisions for yourself. It says, and swords in their hands, because the swords are a representation of what? These guns that they have. The defense that they have, the arms that they're going to take up against the government. It says, for there shall be sedition among men, right? Among men, they're going to be rising up against each other, but they're also going to be bonding together for one cause, and that cause is to fight against, any so-called, what they call tyrannical government. It says, and invading one another, right? Because they're going to cross the boundaries. See, like now, you have people that break in people's houses and, home invasions, but for the most part, the average American respects, other people's rights, so to speak. You still have your muggings and your, like I said, house invasions and all that. But for the most part, the average American respects each other's, space, so to speak. But there's going to come a point where desperation is going to set in, and they're going to cross those boundaries. One small example of that would be, down in Louisiana, when the levees broke and Jake was trying to get out of Dodge, and their so-called white friends turned against them. They would go through neighborhoods trying to get out of, harm's way to run into more harm. being shot at by Edomites because they were in their neighborhoods. So shit is gonna get real. And the people of America and the world, but we're dealing with America, Babylon the Great, are gonna be in for a rude awakening because they're thinking that it's 2024 and that things are different now. That Esau's all right, they're cool. Yeah, they're cool until they're threatened. They're cool until they're in need. They're cool until their position is threatened. You see, it says they shall not regard their kings nor princes because the rule of the street is going to be what they call anarchy. In other words, the rules of the government will not be in place. What will be in place is the rule of the strong. Only the strongest will survive. The rule of the jungle. All right. So they're not going to be listening to their presidents. They're not going to be listening to their mayors, to their sheriffs, to their police officers. And this is why eventually they will have to send in the military, which the military are in certain places already, and act martial law, bring in the National Guard, the reserve, so on and so forth, to reestablish order. And that's what they do. And if you go and you do the research on the Civil War, you see that they were fighting against each other, Edomite against Edomite, which we're going to get that scripture also. So all of these things are going to bring tensions. It says, in the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Why? Because they're not going to be listening to the legislation that's in the books. They're going to go by, what they believe this country was founded upon, which was nothing but a bunch of lies, but it was founded upon the Constitution. And the Constitution affords every man, which is really the Edomites, not Jake, these different rights, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and so on and so forth, and everything else that comes along with it, So it says, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able, for because of their pride, the cities shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. And that's the point. Men shall be afraid. So when they are afraid, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to take up arms because Esau believes in their guns. So they're going to take up arms and they're going to defend their position, and you're going to have those that are going to be going different cities and all that, looking for food, like you see in the movie or the series The Walking Dead, the movie The Road, the movie Book of Eli, and the movie Fallout. The series Fallout, and all of these other different futuristic movies where they show you the total collapse of society and the callous, non-feeling of one individual for others, because it's all about survival of the fittest. It's all about survival. All right. It says a man should have no pity upon his neighbor. Right. You were cool for 30 years, 25 years, Then all of a sudden when hard times happen, you're like, no, I don't know you. Remember the movie Leave the World Behind? That one individual, what the hell is his name? Kevin Bacon, I think his name is. I think it's Kevin Bacon, if I'm not mistaken. That was in the movie Footloose. He used to work for the Jake, and the Jake was a well-to-do Jake, and he had the contractor that would come and do work for him. But then when society collapsed, the Jake rolled up to him and said, "Wait a minute, yo, I know you." He said, "Nah, these are different times, pretty much, in so many words." So now it's like you didn't take heed, you didn't prepare yourself. So now I can't help you. I can't do nothing for you, man. But shall destroy their houses with the sword, right? Because you're gonna have the real home invasions. Because people are gonna be lacking food, they're gonna be lacking bread, which is the main thing. Bread and water, hunger and thirst are gonna be the main motivators, and of course survival. It says, and spoil their goods, right? Because you're gonna have stuff that's gonna be taken away by others, because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation, because that's what's coming, the time of Jacob's trouble. So when we continue on, we have here American Media Group, which I put this in the description box. FBI agent Ted Gunderson, FEMA smart guillotines placed in FEMA internment camps in case of martial law in times of civil disorder. And this was dated September 8th, 2023. But this goes back years. I think back into the 90s when Ted Gunderson, what you see here, he's the one that blew the whistle on the FBI and, you know, the things that they were doing and the provisions that they were making. Now, these devils, right, in order to prove these things, they'll say, well, in other words, you have to have an actual receipt that the government purchased, you know, 30,000 guillotines. But you're not going to have that, because the only ones that would have that would be them. You know, there's no way that there's any individual out here that's speaking on these things have the actual receipt to where they purchase these guillotines, you know. But if the provisions are in this bill, House Bill 1274, and you have the option to, you know, be deleted by guillotine, why would they make that provision if they didn't have any guillotines? This is an actual law, so it doesn't make sense that so where are these guillotines? Anyways, FBI agent Ted Gunderson, FEMA smart guillotines placed in FEMA, blah, 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 in case of martial law in times of civil disorder. And this is what the international banking families are pushing. Remember, they have their motto, Auto Ab KO. Read it, blah, blah, blah. NWO FEMA camps martial law Operation Rex 84. Yeah, Operation Rex 84 is pretty much the rounding up of Jake and, you know, and others that come against us. FEMA's list, hydrogen cyanide. So pretty much FEMA's list, you have the red list, the blue list, and the either yellow or green. You have conflicting, you know, some people say yellow list, some people say green list. Nevertheless, red being the most threat, blue being the next, and then either yellow or green being the least. Yellow and green, most people in America fall under the yellow and green, you know, banner or color, because they are cheap. They're just ready to be taken. You know, anything the government says, they roll with it. Then you have the blue list, which are those that are a problem but not as much. And then you have the red list. Those are just pretty much set up for termination. You know, and the yellow and green and possibly some of the blue that they can so-called salvage, when they go to these different places, you know, in these internment camps, this is where they plan on re-educating them, on top of, you know, plugging them with that, you know, subdermal device. All right. Now you can watch this different videos on here. I put this, like I said, in the description box. Take a dive into the rabbit hole. This is not conspiracy, but merely facts compiled over the course of the last 20 plus years. Set your cognitive dissonance aside and open your mind to what has been hidden from you for the last century. Right? Because it's one thing to speak about a so-called conspiracy theory, but there's another thing to have the actual receipts and the things that are out there are actually happening. The things that were in movies back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, well, actually from the, let's say, 70s to the 90s, are actually happening today. At one time, they were being called the conspiracy theorists. But now when you look at all of the things that the people that they call conspiracy theorists were saying, they're all happening and coming to pass and being pushed by the government. If you are new to this type of research, let me just go on. FBI agent Ted Gunderson, when retired FBI agent, the now deceased Ted Gunderson, reportedly told a gathering of militia members that the federal government had set up 1,000 internment camps across the country. I had no trouble believing his FEMA coffin Sherry 1 statement, because there is ample documentation to support his statements, e.g. Rex 84, Operation Garden Plot, and now the NDAA, which is a National Defense Authorization Act, if I'm not mistaken. And they do have these FEMA, you see pictures of the FEMA coffins where they say you could fit to be at least 3 bodies in there. Well, with Big Shirley, only 1. However, when Gunderson reported that the federal government was storing over 500,000 caskets outside of Atlanta, I also knew he was accurate on this point, because Sherry Wilcox found the evidence in the adjacent photo However, when I heard the Gunderson was accusing the government of storing 30,000 guillotines, I thought he had lost his mind. And he should know, because he was an insider. He was in there. No, they got more videos. Why would the government want to store guillotines? Gunderson told various patriot groups that the guillotines were being stored for the day the government declares martial law and moves in to round up and execute American dissenters. Gunderson prophetically told patriot groups that the federal government was going to keep track of all of us, which they're doing through these so-called smartphones, smart devices. The last statements has indeed proven accurate given the recent Snowden NSA scandal. Can somebody please explain to me why the government would need to order 30,000 guillotines? For what legitimate purpose could these tools of execution be utilized? The guillotine has never been used inside of the United States. The United States has executed people by firing squad, hanging, and electric chair and lethal injection. The U.S. has never executed a convicted criminal through the use of the guillotine. So why do you have the provision in Georgia that says if you want to donate your organs that you can be deleted by the guillotine? Given these facts, and why is the government importing 30,000 guillotines as Gunderson claimed? Oh, I know that some of the sheep are now looking up from the ground and have just said there aren't any guillotines in the United States. Boom, boom. Then please tell me, Sheep of America, why did Representative Doug Tepper of the Georgia Legislative Assembly Democrat introduce a bill which will supplant the method of execution, the electric chair with the guillotine, back in 1995-96? The reference bill was Georgia State House Bill HB 1274, death penalty, guillotine provision. Certainly Tepper would have never thought that this was possible. If there were not already guillotines inside of the United States. Scary times we're living in. The government of the United States announced that they are going to go with FEMA concentration camps to control the spread of virus. Yeah, but this is the cover story. That's what they pushed at, because they need something to declare a state of emergency. And a state of emergency can be held for about, I believe it's 6 months. But they could do it indefinitely. But for those of you who don't know this, FEMA is another word for martial law and the way of to control the population, right? Because I believe, I'm not sure how long it was, but I believe Trump, when that whole thing came out in 2020, with the sea ragamuffin, of course, he gave, I believe he gave full authority over to FEMA at one point. I would have to go back and research that, but I remember something like along those lines happening. Edward Snowden has just made that abundantly clear to the entire world. All right, and you can read more of this. And like I said, I was kind of skimming through. I wasn't really reading anything until I came across this video here, which this video, it was the first, I think, 2 or 3 minutes, was the original trailer to the movie Gray State, which never came out, in which they showed you, how society was collapsing, the economy was collapsing, and they declared martial law. They were putting, inserting things in people to be able to track them so that they can purchase, because this is the wave of the future, people. This is the wave of the future. This is what they want. And when I was watching this, right, that's when the thought came to mind that the ones that's going to be affected the most are these patriotic Edomites, because they're the ones that stand the most to lose. And that's why there's going to be what the scriptures call, what they call civil war, which it is in the scriptures in the book of Mark, which the first person I heard bring this out was the elder Karatazar from the Vegas camp. Let me see if I can find it this way. Okay, let me try to divide it. go to Mark. Right, I believe this is it. Let me go here. Let me go to Bibles. No, that's not it. But it actually uses the term Civil War. Let's see this one. Right. NLT, this is St. Mark chapter 3 verse 24. It says a kingdom divided by civil war will collapse. You know, and that's pretty much what it is. And civil war is when two factions of the same country are fighting against each other. And they just recently had this movie out called Civil War, which we actually went to go see. So now, here we go. We got the definition for civil war. It says a war between citizens of the same country. You see? And the first civil war happened back in, it was 1800. It was after 1865 or so. Or was it before? Let's see. You know what? Yeah. 1861. Actually, it was before the so-called emancipation of the slaves, because they knew it was coming, and it ended May 26, 1865. So it was about roughly 4 years. Also known by other names, was a civil war in the United States between the Union, the North, and the Confederacy, the South, which had been formed by state that had seceded from the Union. And that's what we see now, you know, certain states seceding from the Union because they see that the government is corrupt, it's tyrannical. So they don't want any parts of it. So they want to defend their position. All right. So it says that a kingdom divided by civil war will collapse. Let me see something. The word divided is the word merizo, which you have the word part, portion, coast. To divide, to separate into parts, you have like medium, cut into pieces, to divide into parties. An example would be split into factions, right, which is civil war. One fighting against another. So before we continue on, you know, like I said, you go watch some of these videos and read some more of this if you want. Another thing that came as I was searching for more information, I came across the Noahide laws, which Apostle Gabar always, you know, used to go into this. And pretty much these are 7 laws. You know, some say it's more, but 7 laws. And the punishment for breaking those laws would be to be deleted, but by decapitation, as you can see here. According Sanhedrin 56a, for Noahides convicted of a capital crime, the only sanctioned method of execution is decapitation, considered one of the lightest capital punishments. See, so the lightest capital punishments, right, which is the least, falls into what? Into the category of draconian legislation, which is what these devils, you know, have been passing, because the small hats are in control of this. Now, these Noahide laws, right? I tried to, you know, look for the origins of them, and they say that there were laws given to Adam and to Noah, which you're not gonna find that, but the origins of it date back to 1st century CE to the 6th century CE, which was we know as AD. CE is Common Era. AD is Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. So between the 1st century and the 6th century, which is the 5th century, or the 500 AD, that's when these things were compiled. Now, it goes back to the Talmud. Now you had Jake that set up the Talmud, but remember, you had Esau that was forcibly converted into, into Judaism, and it very well could be them that put these things together, So I'm just, it's just a speculation. I don't have the proof on that. I'm just speculating, just being on how deviant these devils really are. I mean, Jake is wicked, but these devils are deviant too. So Revelation 13:11 says, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb. The 2 horns like a lamb represent what they call a bipartisan party, which is the senators. The Republicans and Democrats. It says, and he spake as a dragon. And how did he speak? Through the legislation that they're passing, which is draconian legislation, which is what the word dragon goes back to. The word dragon goes back to the word drakon, which goes back to Draco. Right? And then the word dragon also means to be keen or to be cruel. It says a dragon, a great serpent, name of Satan, which they don't really give you much on that. But then when you look up Draco, right? Draco, built in Romania, the full-size Draco pistol. Okay, that going into that. Let me just type in draconian. Draconian, of laws or the application excessive, harsh, and severe. Now we read over here. Matter of fact, let's go to from there to let's hold on this on deck. Isaiah chapter 10. We read over here that according to the Sanhedrin 56a, Noahides convicted of capital crime, the only sanctioned method of execution is decapitation, considered one of the lightest capital punishments. So the lightest capital punishment would be decapitation, for breaking these laws. And who do you think is in charge of enforcing this? This is why you have legislation in place, on anti-Semitisms. All right, now the word draconian goes back to the word Draco. What is the origin of draconian? Draconian, unusually severe or cruel, is based on Latin Draco, stem Dracon, plus the adjective eon. In ancient Athens, a city-state that is now the capital of Greece, Draco, known to his fellow Athenians as Dracon, was a statesman who was famous or infamous for the unusually harsh laws he enacted. And the punishment was, for the most severe crime was death, and for the least severe crime was death. So pretty much this is what these devils are putting in place. And remember, they have an agenda. So as we progress, Isaiah 10:1, woe to them that decree unrighteous decrees. What is a decree? A decree is a law. Goes back to this particular one, goes back to the word chakwak. Chakwak. To cut out, decree, inscribe, set, engrave, portray, govern. So these are laws that are enacted into the government or into legislation so that they can use it on the books to justify them or why they're putting the person to death or deleting them. When we go to the book of Maccabees, right? First Maccabees, which this is also an Edomite, the 1st chapter and the 41st verse, it says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people. So this was another attempt at a one world government, new world order. And they wanted it what? The new world order for them back then wasn't a thing of, well, you have your, beliefs, you have your rules, your regulations, and this, that, and the other. So we should come together and draw something up to where everyone can have equal rights in this thing. And you can have some of your stuff here, some of our stuff here, some of these other people's stuff. No, It was all dictatorial, tyrannical. Either you comply or you get deleted. And everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers to Jerusalem and to the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land. Right? So the king sent what? Letters. What are the letters? These are laws, legislation. You know, that look, this is what you got to do. And then it said, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbath and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and the holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts. That they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation. And this is how the Israelites became, certain Israelites became foreign. Certain Israelites became unclean, became profane. That's why the Jews in Jerusalem, the Israelites that knew that they were Israelites, were calling them heathen, uncircumcised, because they were profane. And when you had the temple that was profane, you had to, pretty much remove the stuff out of it and rededicate it. But the stuff that you remove out of it, you had to, delete, so to speak. To the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And this is how, in process of time, the children didn't know eventually that they were Israelites. Why? Because you could not even so much as call yourself an Israelite back then. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should be deleted, should die. See? So this is what is being enacted today in America. Same thing, by these unrighteous decrees. All right? So when we go to who enacted the Noahide laws, what is the origins of the Noahide laws? Noahide laws, a Jewish Talmudic designation for 7 biblical laws given to Adam and to Noah before the revelation to Moses on Mount Sinai. And let me see. When were the Noahide laws written? According to the Talmud, the 7 laws were given first to Adam and subsequently to Noah. The Tannaitic and Amoraic rabbinic sages first to the 6th century CE. What is the origin of the Noahide laws? Earlier scholars located its origins variously in the Bible among Hittite legal scholars and during the Maccabean era, which is not true. All right, but it goes back to the 1st to the 6th century. AD. They say here CE, but it's AD. I know Domini, they say Common Era. We say the year of our Lord. All right, and they're pushing this. All right, so Isaiah 19:1, the burden of Egypt, behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud. Now, a burden, right, which is the word masha'ah, is load, bearing, tribute, burden, lifting, load, burden. As we read through here, utterance, oracle, burden. So this burden that Egypt or modern day America is carrying, is the burden of the prophets cursing them out by the words of Yahawah Yahawashi. Isaiah 13:1, the burden of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amos did see, lift you up a banner upon the high mountain. What is a banner? The Bible. What is the high mountain? America, Babylon the Great. Exalt the voice unto them, shake their hand. So when you're exalting the voice and shaking the hand, you're telling somebody off. And they're not liking the fact that they're being told off. And because they're in power, they don't like that. So what they're doing is they're making it harder and harder to get information out there. And that's why you have a lot of disinformation, a lot of what they call fake news out there, a lot of newspeak. So those that are newly coming into the game, so to speak, will not be able to find their way. But if you are part of the elect, the Lord Yahawah Yahawashi will guide you. that they may go into the gates of the nobles. The nobles represent the ones that keep the government, you know, the ones that keep the laws. Because you had Antiochus Epiphanes back then, he gave a decree, but then he would send men, you know, different ambassadors to different places where Jake was to implement the laws that were already placed in the books by that letter that he gave out. All right. So going back, the burden of Egypt, behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud. This because when the Most High sends Yahawashi back, Yahawashi has come. The idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. Why? Because they're going to see this great power from the heavens, the chariot of Yahawashi and the other chariots, and the great power that they're coming with to destroy them. Now, whether it is satanic. I mean, it's not the Tower of Babel, but it is satanic. You know, it's CERN. You know, even their symbol is a 6. I mean, it's like 4 of them. It's like 66666. But the point is they're going through 6. So pretty much it's just you know, they're trying to harness demonic spirits so that they can keep ruling, but they won't be able to rule. You know, and they are trying to be equal with the Most High. That's what Isaiah, the 14th chapter, is all about. It says, and I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. There go your civil war. And they shall fight everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. Why? Because of the great great tribulations and the what's the word I'm looking for? The government imposing into their ability to search for life, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, and they know this, so they're going to be fighting against the government. And this is biblical prophecy. And the spirit of Egypt shall fall in the midst thereof. Why? Because this so-called country that's supposed to be united is really divided, and it's to the charmers and to them that have familiar spirits and to the wizards, and they're not going to be able to prosper. You know, all of these different witches and warlocks that they have, that they consult with, you know, what they should do next and what should be the next step, it's not gonna matter, because it's going to be brought to nothing. Their counsel is going to be brought to nothing. Isaiah 47 says that they're wearied in the multitude of their counsels. And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord Yahweh Shemel, the Lord of hosts. Yeah, because Yahawashi is going to be set up. You know, because when these devils get to a certain point, the Lord is going to put the spirit on Russia, which it already is, and America's allies, the European Union, so on and so forth, China and all them, to shoot missiles at this place, to make this place as the lake of fire that the scriptures prophesied to be. And the waters shall fall from the sea, and the rivers shall be wasted and dried up. Right, because there's not going to be anything left on the soils of America. And they shall turn the rivers far away, and the brooks of defense shall be emptied and dried up. The reeds and flags shall wither. So pretty much all of their defense is not going to help when this destruction comes. Because when the missiles come, there's not going to be anything to stop it. You know? Nothing to stop it. The paper reeds by the brooks, by the mouth of the brooks, and everything sown by the brooks shall wither, be driven away, and be no more. Right? Because the scriptures say that the elements shall melt with fervent heat. All right? And you could read the rest of this. You know, it goes into, you know, the devastation that's coming to this place. And also it speaks about the Israelites here speaking the language of Canaan, which the language of Canaan is the Hebrew, which proves that we will have the Hebrew language. You know, and this is not talking about ancient Egypt. You've seen Elder Pastor Hart did a video where the IUIC is trying to spin this, that was talking about ancient Egypt. No, it was not. This is talking about modern day Egypt, America. All right? Because back then, when we were in Egypt, you know, Jake knew Hebrew. They knew how to speak Hebrew. Remember, you had Jacob, you know, that came in with the patriarchs. So the children knew Hebrew. to how they're going to speak the language of Hebrew that they already knew. Come on, man. What else we got? And that's pretty much it. It's pretty much it. So, you know, when you get a chance, you could read through some of this. But, yeah, man, these devils are busy, which is good. You know, let them keep pushing, because the more they push, the more the Lord's going to push. And once they get to a certain point, what's the breaking point is what? When they bring out the MOTB, which is a micro C hip, that's when the Lord is going to make things speed up even more. You know, so with that, you know, I pray that you brothers and sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.